Welcome back to Newsviews. I'm Tanya Babich. My guests this morning are Margaret Frisbee, Executive Director of Friends of the Chicago River, and Jacqueline Wegner, the Shedd Aquarium's Director of Conservation Action. Now, we've talked about Shedd's kayaking program, but there are other things happening on the river as well, Margaret.
Yeah, absolutely. So Friends of the Chicago River has a host of programs that are educational and serve as engagement tools to get people out, like we've talked about with the Shedd Aquarium's paddling, so that you can experience the river for yourself. So we actually started taking people canoeing in the mid-90s when people thought it was crazy. There were no public boat launches. We called it guerrilla canoeing, literally like guerrilla warfare, because you're dragging canoes down the bank. But it really gave people this magical opportunity to start to see the river. These days, we're not alone out there in canoes for sure. There's tons of places you can go canoeing and kayaking, which is terrific. We also do volunteer restoration activities. So along, we're making forest preserves healthier along the river system. So it opens up the forest preserve so people can use them, but it's also much healthier ecologically speaking. So there's a host of things like that we do. Sorry.
No, not at all.
Please. And then the other thing that I think is most accessible and right downtown is our McCormick Bridge House and Chicago River Museum, which tells the story of the Chicago River from before there was permanent European settlement, when it was a wild river and there were bears in Chicago, and kind of moves through history and how it got polluted and how Chicago became such a big, exciting city, and then to the point where we are today, where the river is recovering and we all changed the way we view it.
And then, we have these programs which are exciting, they're great, we have development along the riverfront, but do either of your organizations have any concerns about overdevelopment?
Well, I think it's really a question of how it's done. So right now there's conversations about the Sterling Bay property up at Lincoln Yards. We have the 78, and those are just in Chicago. And it's how they embrace the river. So we've been in conversations about, instead of having river edges, having river banks. So places where, I know at Lathrop Homes, where there's a redevelopment happening, we talked to the developer, Related Midwest, and I said the first place I ever saw a snapping turtle on the Chicago River was at that place, at Damon and Diversey. And when you're done, I want snapping turtles to still be happy there. And they made a commitment to do that. And so if we embrace the river that way and think about wildlife at the same time we're thinking of people, we're going to actually be giving the river back to everybody as opposed to taking it away.
So lots of people can wrap their heads around the idea of being in a vessel on the water. The goal, though, is to make it swimmable, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how far off are we from that?
Well, surprisingly, we're not that far away. I'd like to say there's some physical barriers, but there's some cultural ones. We have a long legacy of the Chicago River as our dumping ground. We literally named part of it the Sanitarian Ship Canal, so that's not so inspiring when you're talking about swimming, right? But the water quality has improved dramatically. The Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, our sewage and stormwater agency, has really, through their tunnel and reservoir program, which is, most people know as Deep Tunnel, that has prevented 85% of combined sewer overflows that used to end up in the river.
But that's just 85%.
So there still are problems. So we need to do green infrastructure and capture our stormwater so it doesn't end up in the sewer system, which is what contributes to the overflows. And we also just need to think about what else is going in, even places where it's not a combined system. So what's on the road salt, motor oil, all those things. If there's a direct pipe, it goes right into our waterways. So we need to work collectively to stop that from happening.
And Jacqueline, what else would would Shedd like to see happen along the waterfront?
Yeah, so I'm thinking about all these things that end up in the river. A lot of it is around prevention, but we also work a lot on removal of things that shouldn't be in the river. And so Friends of the Chicago River and Shedd Aquarium both host different types of litter cleanups. Shedd hosts them regularly at Pink Tom Memorial Park in Chinatown. Just this year at 4 river cleanups, we've collected 500 pounds of litter. And so the removal and the prevention are both aspects that are important. One thing that we're trying to do in partnership with Friends and other organizations is better understand the types of litter that end up in the river, how they're getting there. So is it all getting washed off rivers into sewers and then ending up in the river? Is it getting blown out of garbage cans into the river? So we are looking to try to study that more in the future collectively to try to find out what litter is there, so how can we prevent it in the first place?
Briefly, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face moving forward?
I think that the foundation of all of it is the water quality. And so people, they look at litter, they start to realize that they want it to be gone. But the complex system of this 156-mile waterway that was designed into our sewer system is culturally, there's this barrier where we're still a little afraid of it. I think that as we clean up the water and we see more people on it, it changes people's minds. But that water quality, it takes federal law, it takes state law, it takes county law, it takes city commitment, and we all have to work collectively. And sometimes in history, we're all working together, and right now, it's really complex to get those things. The law, it's even hard to get the law enforced. So that's really, I think, the foundation of it all.
Well, Margaret and Jacqueline, thank you for teaching us a little bit today about all of that.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure.
And that does it for Newsviews. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And now let's go back to the desk. Hey, if you like that video, be sure to subscribe to our ABC7 Chicago YouTube channel.